Oh, my woes. Yeah, how long's it been since we spoke?
I mean, it feels like it's been a long time.
Has it been like 2 weeks or something?
Yeah, I think at least 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's because we haven't spoken since I went on holiday, have we? Oh, I lost you. You back?
I lost you too. I'm back now. I'm back. Here we are.
We haven't spoken since I went on holiday, have we?
I think that's right. Yeah. And you got super sick.
I've been sick.
I was sick before that. I didn't even tell you about it. You got sick.
I was sick.
Dude, the best was getting the loom from you in bed with a coat on. You had your coat on and you had your hat, and it started out just straight up in the dark.
Yeah, dude.
You were like, "Hey, dude."
Oh man, it was next level.
Killed me, man.
Oh, it was next level.
I was laughing, but I knew you were hurting, so then I felt bad for laughing. But
oh, dude, it was so brutal. And then the whole family's got it as well. Like all of them have got it. Like my wife's no, Lisa hasn't got it actually. She's probably going to get it over Christmas. But Story's got it. Winter's got it.
And
just to be we haven't got COVID, but we've just got sort of like a mutant. I think it's called like Schmovid or something. It's like a new COVID. It's like a mutant variant that's in my house. We've been growing it in my house.
It started with you.
Oh man, yeah. The evil Schmovid. But yeah, man. What have you been up to? What have you been up to over the last couple of weeks?
Man, so much. I had COVID over our Thanksgiving holiday, which was insane. And I'm pretty much fully recovered now, although I still don't quite have taste and smell back. I mean, double vaxxed, breakthrough case. I was and I didn't tell you in real time. I don't know why, dude. I just felt like I felt ashamed somehow. I don't know,
you should have been out and proud.
I know, just like, hey, but I'd been so careful and, then got vaccinated and was out playing some gigs and probably got it on a gig. Yeah. But man, we have 2 levels in our house. So I was isolating from my family and dude, it was brutal on my wife in a sense for me, because I didn't get very sick. I mean, I was just up in like the base layer for 10 days. I was making content. Dude, I was watching that Beatles doc, and like and I would hear Emily with the kids just being like, "Wah!" And dealing with what you deal with, and I felt so guilty, but
so good.
And I mean, I'm lucky that it wasn't worse, but it's so strange, man. So strange. Anyway, I'm back in the land of the living. It looks like you are too, and that's a good thing. Yeah,
man. I'm feeling good. I'm just sort of like pumped for next year. Honestly, I'm just really when it gets to this time of year, like I'm excited for the Christmas and stuff like that with the kids, but I'm really excited. Whatever.
BS, dude.
But I'm really excited about next year. About next year. Yeah, like when I get into next year, it'll be carnage. I'll be like, what were you even thinking about? This is awful. This is hard. But now, it's like, it's going to become January 1st and all of my problems that I've had this year is going to just disappear. And I'll have no problems to fix and no issues to sort out or anything like that. But I am actually really, I kind of look at I don't know about you, man, but I look at the new year, and I'm definitely not like a New Year's resolution type of guy. But what I am is I feel like I'm at the start line. I'm like, it's the right, like, the end, when it's the end of December, I'm sort of like slowing down, and January, it's like, I'm at the start line, let's fucking do this. I mean, let's go.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes. And it's nice context, right? It gives you kind of this, even though it's sort of imagined, I mean, it's just another date. You could look at it that way. But when you look at it like, it's the start of something new, it's a nice reset. I feel that way too. Yeah.
What are you going to do next year, man?
What am I going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
I'm going to make a lot of content for SBL.
You're going to do a lot of videos.
I'm going to make a lot of videos, dude. I'm going to try to make some of my own music. I'm going to try to get even more involved in helping out people with product stuff. That's something that I feel really passionate about. I'm going to try to be a better dad and a better husband and a better son. We'll see how all that goes. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to do I'm excited to do more of the things that I'm already doing. I'm really happy with the things that I'm doing. So I'm just excited to like dive harder in to those areas.
Yeah. Dude, you should do more music. You should definitely do more music. But you like, how's the trio going? You've got the trio, haven't you?
Yeah, so there's a trio I play with called Orange Goodness.
Yeah, the Orange Goodness,
and they're wonderful. It's so fun. And yeah, Mike, who's the leader of that band, Mike Michael is his name. And he's booking stuff, and geez, man, I mean, who knows, but just a couple of shows here and there that look fun in the spring and summer. And I've got a little bit of stuff going on right in the beginning of January with Eric Hutchinson, and something too with Spectre Basses. Nice. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, I want to put out a little of my own music. And I was thinking, I want you to put out some music too.
I'd love to do that.
Is that something?
Yeah,
I know.
I'd love to do it.
I think you should.
I think I should. I've been saying this.
You should.
Yeah, I know. I'm just going to call my
add
own
it
BS,
to the
right?
plate.
I'm going to sort of like, I'm busy, meh. But like the reality is that I definitely should do. I'm actually thinking about bringing on an assistant next year. So, and I'm in the process of doing that. So I've actually got like, we've had a bunch of people apply for the role, and I'm down to maybe like the last 7 people or something like that.
Amazing.
So I reviewed their videos and stuff that they've sent through. So yeah, I'm thinking about bringing on an assistant, because kind of just to hold myself accountable to shit like that, because it's, well, 2 reasons. First, to hold myself accountable to stuff like that, because I can give it to them as sort of like a project to work with me. And just my experience so far, especially working with, and I've mentioned this before, like Phil, who's director of operations at SBL, like this guy's like a fighter pilot. You give him sort of like project and
Absolutely.
he's off. And and like once you've given him a project, it's happening. I'm like, whoa. So like several sort of like friends, I'll be speaking to them. I'll be like, yeah, we should do so and so, and it's like, it's easy, and maybe like a couple of weeks afterwards, you can be like, yeah, let's not do that thing. But people like Phil, who are just freaking amazing at executing, just these sort of like fighter pilot executors. You can't do that with these guys, right?
You can't even give him the idea.
You can't give them sort of like, let's do this project because some people are like, we should do this project, and then you see them in 2 or 3 weeks, and you kind of like, you say the same thing. Yeah, we should do that project.
Yeah, we should do it.
With guys like Phil, fighter pilots, you're like, hey, let's do this project, and then you see them in 2 or 3 weeks, and it's like, oh yeah, I've done 50%. We're nearly there. We just need to pick you to pick this up. And I'm like, whoa. So, but on a personal level and professional as well, it would really help to have somebody like that in my sort of like everyday projects and stuff like that. So just to sort of like help me along, pick some stuff up when I'm sort of like struggling, because I'm full of ideas and sometimes not great at executing. Let me just put that out there. Not great at executing. So I need
just
to
day-to-day stuff. Day-to-day stuff that you don't need to do, or that someone else could do. It'd be great to have that offloaded from your plate.
It's definitely some stuff that I don't need to do, but it's also somebody to sort of like push me along when I need to do something and I'm procrastinating or whatever. I need to surround myself by, with people that are really great at executing, surrounding myself with really great executors. And I think that I'm just going to be like, being dragged along by them tonight. So all that to say, I definitely need to do something, get my own music out there next year, which would be really fantastic. Looking forward to doing that. And then also, just doing the SBL thing, not only just doing the SBL thing. I think I'm not sure about you, like, sometimes when I get to the end of the year, I kind of like question myself. I'm like, are you really aiming high enough? Like, are you aiming high enough? Are you? Something I've been talking to Lisa about recently. I don't think that we've talked about it, but I've got this. Have you watched Donnie Darko? And I love that film, man. I love Donnie Darko. Of course. Right? And
me too.
Yeah. So there's. Halfway through the film, if anybody hasn't watched Donnie Darko, you should absolutely watch it. Like it's a little out there, but it's a really enjoyable film. And halfway through the film, he actually starts seeing people walking through these it's almost like a wormhole, right? And when I visualize myself going through life, I think that we are all walking through this wormhole, right? And you'll kind of have to watch the video, Donnie Darko, to see what I'm talking about. When you watch it, you'll see these guys sort of like walking along this sort of like predetermined wormhole. It's sort of like these predetermined paths. Now, I don't think that people have predetermined paths, but what I do think is when I visualize myself and that wormhole isn't a predetermined path. It's actually that's my limiting beliefs holding me in.
Right.
It's holding me into what I think is possible within my life and what I can achieve and what I can do. And I'm just operating within this tiny little tunnel. And I'm going along thinking, yeah, this is cool. I'm shooting big. I'm trying to do all of this cool stuff. But the reality is that we're kind of all in these sort of like weird little wormholes. But the wormhole is our limiting beliefs holding us in of what is really possible. I was talking to my son about it as well the other day, and I was like, you know, what we believe is just it's sort of like all of this. It's a lot of it's kind of like our entire past life has created this kind of ceiling to what we think is possible. And and I described this sort of like wormhole kind of idea to him. And he's 8, right? So he's kind of like, I think he got it.
He's like, but okay, Dad.
Yeah, but I do think it's, and the way that I tried to describe it to Story is, I was like, like anything really is possible. I was like, look, we're sort of like, we're hanging out here. I was like, right now, we could actually just get in the car and we could just drive to Loch Ness, which is like a 6-hour drive. We could just be like, you know what? Let's just go to Loch Ness now and look for the Loch Ness Monster. And he was like, what? And like, that is sort of like you talk about it as a family and you plan it and stuff like that. But in reality, you could just go now. In fact, I could just go now. Of course. I could just hang up this fire. I could say to the kids, hey, it's going to be it's going to be a late night, dudes. Get in the car. We're actually going to drive to Loch Ness and we're going to wake up. You know, we'll do an Airbnb, we'll sort it on the way, and we'll wake up and we'll be there right next to, and we're going to go Nessie hunting tomorrow. But we won't do it because it isn't sort of like within, because we're in the weird wormhole that's sort of like, and all of these repeated patterns that we're sort of like trapped by. So all that to say that this is the thing that I've been thinking about going into next year, and whether we can do something much bigger than we're probably not thinking as big as we should do. Any of us.
I have heard you talk about this, not in terms of Donnie Darko and the wormhole, but I really like that visual. But I've heard you talk about this a lot. This like, am I shooting high enough? And that's a question that I need to be asking myself too. I love comfort. I'm a creature of comfort. And sometimes I'll get too comfortable and think, yeah, here we go. This is it. But if I even just looked, and it wouldn't have to be astronomically higher, even, what's that quote that you say, if you improve, 20 things about yourself or your business 1%, you've improved the whole thing by 20%.
Yeah, you're 20% better.
Yes. Yes. I mean, and so I wonder too, even about like, even just looking 1%, 2%, up to 10% higher. I mean, it's funny, I say that and I'm like, oh, is that high enough? Maybe maybe that percentage isn't even high enough. But just, if it sounds daunting to anybody to say like, am I shooting high enough? What if you just started small and went click up a little bit? What's something that's just slightly out of reach? Can you attain that? Yeah. That might give you the confidence to then go kick, a couple more notches up the next time you dream.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating. Yeah, no, I find it fascinating, sort of like what we believe is achievable by ourselves. Like it just, because we don't. Well, me personally, it's not something that's on my mind constantly, and because you kind of get stuck in the weeds, right? And I think that we can probably all shoot way higher than we think. Yeah. Way I think you're right. Higher. And what is that? Like where is it endless? Is it, I read a great book actually. I can't remember what it's called, 10 times. I can't remember. But the thesis in the book actually is that you should aim like 10 times above. Not double. 10 times above where you think is possible, right? And the whole idea around that theory is that even if you fall short of like 80%, if you fall 80% short, you've still got a 20% lift of where you were.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you aim so high, you know, and you only sort of like get halfway there, you've got a long way.
Also, that just shines a light on the thing that I said of like maybe just 1% or 2% higher.
Well, I think, but to your point, though, that some people need to edge into it, you know.
Right.
They need to edge into it.
That's the way I feel. Yeah, I feel like a fear around what if I aim too far and I lose it all? I mean, you know, I don't know. I don't even know what context that's in. But I think to me, like thinking about like 10 times more, well, gosh, what does that even mean? Like, does that mean money? Does it mean where I'm living? Does it mean, does it mean gigs? Does it, what does that all mean?
Yeah.
And I actually really I love my life. And so for me, thinking about like 10 times more, I don't even know what that means. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll just go 1 or 2%.
Hey, dude, but if you did 10 times, you could be like, actually, I don't like it here. I'm going back to I'm going
cold,
back.
Man.
Yeah. Dip your toes in the water, and you're like, I'll tell you what. That we like in this episode. If anybody's wondering where we're going, we're kind of sort of like meandering a little bit, but we are actually going to be talking about fear. Like you've had a bunch of things about stage fright and questions that you can sort of like, let's pop that open in a second. But what I wanted to also, just before I wrap this up, is like, I wonder what the fear is of going 10 times though, or just aiming way high. Like, what is it? What particular, because it's obviously fear-based, right? We're scared of
it. Is.
As you were speaking, I was like, why are we scared? Is it like complexity? Is it that we just don't have the self-confidence to do it? Like, I'm not really sure.
Right.
I'd have to think about that a bit more. And maybe it's personal. Maybe it's different people are fearful of different things, but I'm not sure exactly why I'm not sure. I think for me, it would be operational complexity in my life. Like, is it just going to get crazy? Is it just going to be sort of like super scary, super crazy, and I'm not going to be able to deal with all of the moving parts? Yeah.
Like your day-to-day will become unmanageable somehow.
Yes. Yeah. I'd just be sort of like, it'll be too crazy. And I think that that's false. I think that is a false belief. I think that it's like, I work as hard now. Oh shit, now let me flip this around. I don't work any harder now than like the first week that I started SBL. Didn't get harder. I just work hard. It's just the same. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just work hard. And so if we're aiming hard, if we're aiming real high, maybe it's just the same. Maybe it's not, And I do hear some people saying that you do bigger things, you get bigger problems, and maybe that is it, but I'm not sure. And then on the other side as well, I would say that it's financial as well. I'm like, for me, when I think about doing something big, for me personally, and I think it would be different for every individual, as you said, it could be gigs, it could be finances, it could be professional, sort of like a professional area that you want to move into. For me, it's like growing the business. So when I think about 10 times bigger, I'm just like, there's a lot of financial complexity and risk in there.
Yes.
Like a lot of financial. And I have a hard enough time dealing with the financial complexity and risk at the minute. So to 10 times that makes me sort of like want to go, but maybe, maybe it's doable. Maybe it's doable.
Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, I just think, like, if I go down to the fear that I had when I graduated high school and I was playing in a band and I knew that I wanted to do music, but I had this fear, and it wasn't like my parents didn't instill it in me like, oh, you can't do music. My parents were super supportive, but there was this pervasive thought that I had, and I don't know if I can blame society, but really what it is, it was my buy-in to this scarcity mindset that I thought, well, it's hard to make a living doing music. I better have a backup plan. I went to college, and I majored in something that had nothing to do with music, and I really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. But what I found was the thing that I loved kept drawing me in. It was like I was on a hook. and it was music on the other end, just zzz, and I was not going to get far without like relinquishing control to that thing that I loved, which was music. And so I sort of want to say to people that ask me like, oh, well, do you think I should, put all my eggs in that basket? If you love it, yes, absolutely. Yeah. And check this out, man. I was, came up to kind of some hard times financially, and the band wasn't going so well. I was in my 20s, and I called my old man, Bob Allison. Old Bob Allison. And he's a lawyer. At the time, he was a lawyer, and he became a judge. He's a district court judge now in Montana, where I grew up. Yeah. And I said to him, Dad, I'm at this spot. I don't know. And maybe, Dad, maybe I ought to do what you did. Maybe I should, take the LSAT. I think that's what it is, and try to get into law school. What do you think about that? And he goes, well, let me ask you one question. And I said, okay. And he said, do you want to hate your fucking life? And I am honestly, and I cracked up.
Amazing.
And it was amazing. And he said, Ian, have you suddenly developed a burning passion for law? And I said, no. And he said, well, do you like what you're doing now? And I said, I do. He's like, well, just why don't you lean into that? And dude, it was at a crossroads where if my father would have said to me, yeah, I'll call Professor so-and-so and let's get you into law school, I think I would have done it.
That's wild.
I mean, I know, and hey, and look, maybe it would have been great, right? But maybe it would have been great, and maybe I'd be telling a different story, like, oh, I'm so glad my dad, pulled some strings and got me into law school. But I didn't want to do it. I was operating out of fear, and we can bring it back to fear. I was thinking financially, I was scared. I was like, oh, I'm not making enough money, maybe, and I just thought, and I thought like I also want my dad to be proud of me, right? And so I thought, well, maybe if I go to law school, those things, right? And he shut it down in such a surprising way. And he said to me, Ian, I don't know if you remember, but when I started out doing this, it was really hard. He said, I didn't actually love the law, and I went into this because my dad kind of thought, oh, you ought to do something. He was a doctor, and now he's a judge, and he likes that fine. But I mean, his trajectory was not one of happiness, potentially, right? Yeah. And he was, instead of saying, yeah, you need financial security, he said to me, no, you should prioritize happiness. And man, I'm so glad I did.
Spot on. He was so spot on, wasn't it? You need people in your life sometimes, don't you, just to sort of like be able to zoom out and just look at the situation objectively. And if they've got the capacity to understand life in maybe a deeper way, I think that's just the kind of advice that they need to be given. Just sort of like, because it was probably utter madness. You're probably your dad was thinking, what are you talking about? Like, we've never spoken about this ever in your life. What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? Yeah, you fell in love with the bass at 13, and I was just in my room playing Rush songs constantly. Yeah. And he's like, no, you got it. Don't you feel like you have to do this? And so I'm really grateful for that. And so, I think you're absolutely right. It is about fear, and I don't know where it all comes from, but for me, it just felt like pressure from the world that I needed, this security, financial security. I need to do the right thing. And at that time, the right thing didn't feel like music, but I just needed to push through that barrier. And then it feels a lot more right now than it did then,
Yeah, because the pain's not a bad thing.
Right.
Like it's, I think that, obviously, it depends to what level we're talking about here. But it's like, I've had like financial pain before. I've had no money. I was joking with Phil earlier saying that I was talking about when I smoked. The good old days. Anyway, so I was talking when I smoked, but just for context, man, I had no money. I had no money. In fact, I had only enough money to buy a loaf of bread. And the reason why I talked to Phil about it, so I bought a loaf of bread and I didn't have anything to have in the bread. But I had some gravy granules. I had some gravy granules in the cupboard. And this is when I don't ever tell this story, but I was actually squatting in somebody's flat. Do you guys use that terminology, squatting?
Squatting, yes, but we don't use gravy granules, and I want to know what that means.
Yeah, so I was living in nobody knows what squatting is. I had no money. I was living in a house that I wasn't paying rent for, and it wasn't mine. Yeah. So it's like not a great situation to be in. I think this is probably maybe the first time I've spoken about this publicly ever. Yeah. So I was squatting in this flat, had no money, and a loaf of bread and some gravy granules, and I poured the gravy into this bowl, right? And I'm having it like soup, and damn man, it was salty. But I'll tell you what. But I tell you what, man, I had a full pack of cigarettes, and I was joking with Phil. Like, I was such an avid smoker that I had no money, but I still had cigarette. I would spend my last pound on cigarettes over food. Bonkers.
Priorities.
Yeah,
right?
man.
Priorities.
Yeah, I had my
like that was the priority.
Yeah, but it was. But still, even if I'd gone to my mum at that point and said, hey, and actually told her what was going on, she would have freaked out. But my dad, same as yours, would have had, now I didn't go to them because I think both of them might have freaked out. But if I'd gone to my dad, he would have had sort of a different, he would have had the capacity to zoom out. And something he said to me all throughout my childhood was very similar to the message that you got from yours as well. My dad worked in a factory for pretty much his entire life. And he was like, you cannot do something, do not get a job where you're going to dread going into work, because he said, this is what I've had my entire life, 8 or 9 hours a day, my entire life I've dreaded going into work. And I kind of sort of like heard that mantra over and over and over again. So in that situation, when I'm eating my gravy soup, which was actually just gravy, right? I'm just adding the soup to it. Was just with my cigarettes and my bread, and I'm squatting in this flat.
Bread,
man. I can remember that I didn't really feel panicked about it, because I think that I just felt like I was moving in the right direction, and it was just a speed bump, right? It was a blip in the road,
right? And
I felt good at where I was kind of heading anyway. So I think that in those moments of your life where you are you are rock bottom, or eating gravy. I think that sometimes you just need somebody to have given you that guidance, or somebody to give you the guidance in the moment, which is what your dad did. Wild, man.
I've thought too, Scott, because you mentioned that about your dad before. You mentioned that there was a moment where like it got really close to you working in the factory, right? But he wouldn't or he went in to the foreman or the boss, or whatever, and said, no, Scott's not working here.
Yeah, he was like, get the application, throw it in the bin. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I actually, I ended up giving the recruiter at the factory, I actually ended up giving her daughter guitar lessons. Which was, but this was, and I think it was actually, thinking about it now, I think that was the in. That was the in, man. I was giving her daughter guitar lessons back in the day. Therefore, she knew me. And I can't remember, I got the application, I put it in, and my dad heard, I think my mum told my dad, and she was like, he's put an application in at the factory. And my dad was like, holy shit. What is happening? No way. But I was,
check this out. I've thought about that story at various points in the last number of months. And the thing that I want to say, what's your dad's name?
Roger Divine.
Roger Divine. Cool ass name, man. Cool ass name. Roger did you such a service, because I feel like there's two types of parents, right? There are parents that want something better for their kids, and then there are parents that want the same thing for their kids that they have, the same crappy thing maybe for their kids that they have, because they want someone to commiserate with, or they I see this in parenting where parents are like, well, no, that's the way I was raised, so that's how you're going to be raised. I didn't do it, so you don't get to do it. I didn't have this opportunity, so guess what? That's just what. And man, what a sadness that is, because your dad Roger could have been one of those dads where he would have said, what, boy? It's good enough for me. Why isn't it good enough for you? Your life would be changed forever.
Yeah, for sure. Like there's that going on. I also think there's parents that that they're in the wormhole, right? And they want you in the wormhole with them. So they've got their limiting beliefs that are sort of like, and everything outside that wormhole is super scary. So they want to protect you. And the way to protect their kids is actually to pull them into that wormhole. And that is what you got. So you've got to live within their limits. And so it comes from this weird place of anxiety sometimes, I think, from parents. Like they're really anxious and they want to keep the offspring safe. Come in, I mean, come close. You know, no, don't shoot too high. Don't shoot too high. You know, you might get hurt. Don't risk it all. You might fall. Don't shoot for the moon because something bad might happen. I mean, like that kind of, and I think that there's a really interesting story. Have you heard of the Icarus? The story of Icarus, right? And
yes. I want to say though, I know that very well, but I don't know it very well. So yes.
I think, so there's a story, there's a book called The Icarus Deception, written by Seth Godin. So the original, actually not the original, the story that everybody knows is that Icarus was told not to fly too close to the sun because I think it is the wax that's holding his wings together will melt and he will fall out of the sky. So essentially what the story is saying is don't shoot too high, don't shoot for the moon, something bad might happen. But what actually is missed from the story, the original story that is somehow has been weeded out over time, which is where the book, The Icarus Deception, comes from, is that part of the story was, but don't fly too low. Because, and there's this whole story about something, why you shouldn't fly too low. So it's about balance, it's about balance. It's not about flying too high and getting, your wings burned and falling out of the sky. So anyway, all that to say,
it's great.
It is fascinating.
I love, I love your take though on the parenting thing of like, of being protective of the offspring and saying, hey, I'm in the wormhole or I'm on this trajectory and I'm going to protect you and you're going to be in the trajectory. My thought of it was darker and meaner because I guess I've known, my parents were like this, but I've known some adults that felt more like, maybe more resent. There is a resentful parent too that says, guess what? I was this way, so you're going to be this way too. And it's not so much out of, I'm going to protect you. It's going to be out of, it's like, I had a tough, shitty life, and you're going to have that too. That exists, and that is a tough, I mean, and as a kid, you don't get to choose what kind of parents you have.
I couldn't even imagine having a parent like that. That sucks so bad.
I know.
Like I had my dad doing the, shoot for the moon, and I had my mom that wanted sort of like, come in the wormhole, I want to protect you. So that's the two narratives I had in my life. But I can definitely imagine somebody being sort of like, like a bit gnarly and sort of like, hey, how dare you sort of like, chase your dreams. Like, I mean, like try to almost, I guess I'm trying to sort of like dig into sort of like the psychology around why they would do that. Instead of like, why would they do that? Maybe it's sort of like like it would knock their self-sabotage and who they see.
Absolutely.
Like there'll be a deeper psychological reason why they would want to do that. It wouldn't be like, I'm a nasty bastard, so I'm just going to tell you this. It would it'd be driven by something, wouldn't it?
For sure. Like, you think you're better than me?
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing. It's like, you think you're so hot? Like, this is coming back to my first bass teacher. Remember when I told you that story of my first bass teacher where I played something and what happened is I think it got at his ego. Yeah. He was saying, should I be paying you for bass lessons now? Sarcastically. And I was 13 and I didn't know how to, it was at his ego. What I think it is with parents that are in that mindset is it's like, I didn't achieve my dreams and seeing you achieve your dreams is going to be too painful for me.
Maybe it's too painful.
And that is a sad, and those parents are out there. And so I feel very fortunate to have the parents that I have, Bob and Beth, and you've got Roger and
Janice.
Tell me your mom's name.
Roger and Janice.
Janice.
Oh,
man, that's so cool.
She's a cool mom. She really is. She is. She's like,
so cool.
She's always trying to clean up people's stuff. Yeah, I mean, like she's one of them mums. She operates from sort of like, I joke with her, but she doesn't find it funny. But I try and joke with her. I'm like, Mum. I'm like, there's always a crisis, right? There's always a crisis. I'm like, you do know that if there's not a crisis, you'll just still feel like there's a crisis, right? And she's like, I do not. And I was like, every week's a crisis, Mum. I was like, you need to sort of like just step back and just sort of like look at the bigger picture. But she's great though. She's great. But talking about fear, you had this great idea earlier about talking about, well, you've had some people reaching out about stage fright and how that's affecting them. Like, do you want to jump into that?
Sure, I'd love to. I mean, there have been a few people recently, too, that have said, hey, would you and Scott ever talk about stage fright or confidence on stage or even confidence in front of the camera? The questions come through in a lot of different forms around how do you feel comfortable in your own skin in the environment that you're in. I mean, and of course, it's a really, you could apply this to anything, right? I mean, it's how do you feel comfortable at the work party with your in-laws, but I mean, I would love to know if you have any specific thoughts around stage fright or feeling comfortable on stage. And I was telling you that I just got to see Adam Neely play last night.
Right? Yeah.
Dude, and something that happened with that was it was really eye-opening for me, and I want to talk to you about that. But I don't know. I'd love to open it up to you. Like, do you have thoughts about stage stuff or camera stuff and a journey that you've come through over the years?
Yeah, for sure. So, like I've had a bunch of different experiences with it, and all of them wildly different, actually. So when I was younger, I'll speak about that first. When I was younger, I used to play classical guitar when I was 13, and I had to do classical guitar competitions. Oh, that sounds awful. Can you imagine a bass competition? Anyway,
at 13?
At 13, dude, classical guitar competitions, and it's just violently scary. So it's you on your own on a stage with a classical guitar, and you have to perform these pieces in front of like a room of like 100, 200 people, right? All like sitting there watching you, and you're being judged. So
hardcore.
And I really found them awful, actually. I found them really frightening, really scary. And my dad used to be like, hey, don't worry about it. Just think of everybody like, being naked or whatever it was, right? Right. But that didn't really help me.
The classic thing.
Yeah, classic thing. And I just, honestly, it just terrified me. So what did I do about it? Well, I was young, so not much. I just got up on stage and was terrified about it. In fact, once I nearly threw up, actually, once, and before a competition, which was a bit of a gnarly experience. So that wasn't great. And then ultimately, stopped playing classical guitar around 16, 17, maybe 17, when I was getting into bass and stuff like that. And then honestly, the switch from classical guitar to bass, it never really happened. I never really got stage fright at all on bass. And thinking about it now, it's not something I've thought about in the past, but maybe the experience of doing the classical guitar competitions was so freaking scary.
Right.
That I got on the stage. I was like, this is great. I mean, there's like a bunch of it. I was like, whatever, dude.
You're in the back by the drummer.
Seriously, I was I've never ever had stage fright.
As a bass player, ever?
Never.
That's amazing.
Like, I've had some sort of scary moments where I start sweating a lot.
Sure.
But and I've had some scary moments where there's been a lot of pressure, where I've been, I can remember I took a band, I was like a MD for a vocalist out in Poland, and we had to fly out there, and we were doing this big gig in Warsaw, and we got there, and it was an arena. It was a huge arena. It was live on TV. There was like maybe 8,000 people in the audience. And it was like not really well rehearsed. It was, we'd had a couple of rehearsals and stuff, but there was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of pressure, and I had to be cool. I had to be chilled. I had to lead the band.
Right.
And one of the band members just kind of crumbled under the pressure a little bit just before the actual gig, and I had to handle that. And that was hard. I wouldn't say it definitely wasn't stage fright, but I was scared. I was like, oh God, I hope this is okay. I hope this goes okay. Yeah. But it was definitely different it was different to stage fright. The only times I've ever suffered from that badly was when I was a kid, when I was doing them classical guitar competitions, which were just so brutal. How about you?
Well, you went through the fire early. I walked over the coals. That is, like you can do anything. That's like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? I mean, I think for me, I started out in a band, and I would get nervous before performances, but appropriately nervous. The first time that I really developed some kind of weird pathological thing is that story I told on a podcast a couple episodes ago, where I was in the top hat and the Dickens outfit. And I went to play I went to play We Wish You a Merry Christmas on the upright bass. So many things are wrong with that sentence, but if you haven't heard the story briefly, I crumble. It's a moment, where these band hits, and I'm supposed to be playing boom, doom, goom, 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 and I went to the wrong place. I kind of freaked out. I let my mind get to me, and I blew it. And then I couldn't execute it well, like for the rest of the tour, and I started to go insane. And what really helped me with that, so then I wouldn't have stage fright, like, I can't go on tonight. But when that moment in the show came up for me, I would get so tense and anxious. Mm-hmm. And my hands would kind of start to shake. And a friend of mine said, you're going to hate this answer, but it's the answer. You're making it about you. You're making it, this whole experience is about your dumb bass solo that no one in the audience cares about. They came to see this particular artist. They don't care that you're playing the bass, really. Yeah. So you need to dedicate. So what I've done and what I continue to do now is I dedicate the performance to someone in the audience. So I'll come out, and if I feel like I have anxiety about it, I will find someone in the audience and I will say, sometimes even out loud, this performance tonight is for you. And what that does for me is it helps me out of my own head. And instead of, if I make a mistake, no, people are going to think I'm a bad bass player. If I make a mistake, it might impact the experience that these people have out here. So it's just about mindset. We've talked about this a million times. For me, it's about mindset. It's how you look at why are you scared? People just want to see you do well. There might have been in your 13-year-old guitar competitions, there may have been some people wanting to see you crash and burn. Other 13-year-old guitar gunslingers, right? It's like, I hope Divine crashes and burns. But audiences just want to see you succeed. Nobody wants to see a fail video unfold in front of them. I mean, very few people. I mean, it might be good internet content later, but nobody is there to see the performance go down in flames. For sure. So just remember, I think that is the biggest thing. If you suffer from stage fright, I think you just need to remember that people are there to support you. Really are.
Nobody really cares if you mess up, right? That's the key thing. Nobody really cares. I think that the person that cares the most, and by a large percentage, is the player who's suffering from the fear, from the stage fright, and they're probably suffering from it because some part of their identity is attached to whether they do well or not. And if they don't, they are going to have some kind of it will impact how they feel emotionally. And I think that's the...
and their identity.
Disconnecting that is probably important. Now, I say that in that it's really hard to do, but I think that it might be one of these things where you just need to think about it. You just need to think about it. This isn't... it's not a big deal. Nobody really cares. The only person that cares is me. And the reason I care is because I'm going to feel dragged down. Part of my identity is attached to this. and I'm not going to feel great about myself if I mess it up. So it's only you. So as soon as you maybe like, and I'm saying maybe because I'm just thinking through this stuff out loud, as soon as you try to disconnect it with other people and connect it with yourself feeling down about it, you know, that might help people just sort of like look inwards a little bit. And then, but also on the flip side of that, looking at trying not to make it about you. Well, what we're trying to do with what you were saying, you were trying to make it not about you, weren't you? So it was the realization, the guy who spoke to you was like, you've got this fear because you're attached to it. So you need to detach yourself from that fear and actually focus that on somebody else. Not the fear, but the performance. So perform to somebody. And like I'm sure that there's a bunch of different exercises that
for sure,
or mental models to use around stage fright like this. I've got a great story about, I did a bunch of gigs with a guy called Georgie Fame, who is a legend over here in the UK, and he did years and years of gigging with Van Morrison. And Van Morrison, when he was younger, used to suffer really, really terribly from stage fright, and like really badly, sort of like throwing up like before every gig, like the full thing. And apparently that's where a lot of Van Morrison famously has got a bit of a drinking problem. And apparently that's where it actually was derived from. The only way he could get out on stage was to actually have like a bunch of drinks. And then it's sort of like, it would relax him. He'd kind of like get out of his own head and then he'd go and do the gig. But I'm not suggesting that. But it did the same thing though, in a strange way, right? It kind of sort of like helped him detach from that fear of, when you trace it back, that fear of if I mess this up, it's going to impact who I am.
Yeah,
it's going to impact how I emotionally feel about myself.
And wouldn't you say, Scott, that like you said it earlier here, that no one really cares if you mess up. And what I would add to that, I agree. And what I would add to that is what they care about is how you react.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure.
So if you mess up, no one cares about the mistake you made. But if you're like, oh, or like you show it, or now you're kind of just like, I can't believe it. And like, oh, that's what makes people feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Victor Wooten at the Dakota years and years and years ago. And he was playing, and of course, and the thing that I remember the most about the show is not his technical, incredible chops and prowess, which of course we all know. Yeah. You know, he's an animal. He's one of the best to ever play the instrument, from a technical perspective, and even from a timekeeping and basics and essentials perspective. Good. I mean, he's the whole package. But he took all of these risks on stage. He was playing a solo piece that I'd never heard him play. Maybe it was new, and he was taking a lot of risks. And he wasn't executing all of it perfectly. And he would go, like when he goofed up, he would go, but it was kind of endearing. It wasn't frustrated. It was just like he was reacting and kind of letting us all know that he was really endeavoring to do something new. Yeah. And I loved it because he was owning up to it. He was owning up to that this isn't a flawless performance, but he wasn't getting down on himself. It didn't turn the vibe of the room negative. And I'll never forget that. Like thinking like, man, seeing Victor Wooten not nail the thing was actually the best part of the show. Yeah. Because then like how he reacted to it was this tenacious explosion into the next thing that then he would nail. Like, you know, he wouldn't execute something and then instead of shrinking into himself and, oh, well, now I better play it safe. He was like it just went, like it went hard after the next thing. And I was like, ooh, oh man, it fired me up so much. It was so cool to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it made me think about something. It made me think about, when I was and this actually isn't to do with playing bass, but it's the same thing, right? So, and follow along with me. So, yeah. So we know that it's we know that it's not about, you know, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you make a mistake for the most part, right? So it's all about, you know, it's all about the person. The stage fright is because they are fearful of making a mistake. And when they make the mistake, they're going to feel down on themselves. They're going to feel all of that stuff that we've gone over. But the truth of it is that everybody makes mistakes. Yeah. Everybody makes mistakes all the time, pretty much on every song. So if that is true, which it is, okay, what's the deal, right? It's sort of like, and it brings me to this. Deal. Yeah, what's the deal? Because everybody makes mistakes. It brings me to this point in my life, which I remembered. I think about it all the time, which was when I was working as a luthier, making basses for a company called Overwater Basses here in the UK, and I was like in my first week. I was 17 years old, and hang on, it was my first day. So this is my first day, and I'm setting up a guitar, right? I'm setting up a guitar, and Chris, the guy that owns the company, is showing me how to set them up and stuff like that. And he's like, take the bolts out. So I'm like, he set me this little project to do. So I take the bolts out the back, and then he shows me how to level the neck. So I'm leveling the neck, and then he's like, now sort of like, just all you need to do now is put the guitar back together. I'm like, okay, well that's easy, 4 bolts, put the strings on. So put the neck back on, got the screws, and I'm like screwing them in. And this one screw, I'm like, oh, this is really tight, like that, and it pushes through the front of the fretboard. And I look like this. I'm holding it like that. I'm like, oh God! It's sticking through the front. I'm
Carnage.
Like, okay, just take that out, take it out. And it's really hard to get out, actually. I'm like, it's squeaking and stuff like that. And I'm left in this situation. I'm like, do I say anything? And I'm like, of course I need to say anything. I'm like, Chris, I've just screwed this screw right through the front of the fretboard. And he's like, looks like this. And he's like, and I obviously feel really bad about it. We look at the 4 screws, and unlike a normal guitar, these 4 screws were different lengths.
Oh, crazy.
There was 2 shorter ones and 2 longer ones, and I just hadn't spotted it. And I put one of the longer ones in the front of the, anyway. And that's why it had gone through the front of the fingerboard, okay?
Sure.
So he's like, so I'm really feeling bad about this. And he's like, look, and he shows me how to repair it. We repair it. It's all good. And he's like, look, everybody makes mistakes. Every single guitar maker and bass maker, they all make mistakes. He said, the difference is the really great ones know how to recover from that mistake and just make, and carry on and make good and then carry on, get over it, whatever. He said the bad ones, he said, when that mistake happens, they have no clue what to do and everything falls to bits. So which brings me back to my point, and the point about Victor Woon, is that if everybody makes mistakes all of the time, which they do, the difference between the great players and the not so great players, or the experienced players and the not so experienced players, which is maybe what we're talking about here now, I mean, more like experienced players and not so experienced players, is that the experienced players, when a mistake happens, they're just like, there's another one of those mistakes, and they know how to recover and just get out of it. Whereas somebody that's not so experienced and might be suffering from like this fear on stage fright, is when something happens, or they've got all of this anxiety that something is going to happen, they're going to make a mistake. And of course they're going to make a mistake, because we've already talked about it. Everybody makes mistakes, right? So they're dreading this thing that is going to happen. I mean, they're dreading the thing. So first of all, just freaking stop dreading the thing, because it's going to happen. So they're dreading the thing. And when it happens, which it is going to happen, because of course it happens all the time, it happens, they're like, oh, that thing I was scared about just happened. Whereas the more experienced player, they're not scared about that, because they know it's going to happen. And when it happens, they know, because they're experienced, of how to sort of like maneuver out of it emotionally. And sometimes emotionally, it doesn't even register, because they're just like, oh, I made a mistake, blah, blah, and they'll carry on. But then they also know how to musically move out of it as well. So I think that it comes with experience. But for anybody that is thinking like the stage fright thing, and fearful, please just think about these things, the points that Ian and I have been over, that it's not about the audience, it's actually all about you, and you've got this mass anxiety about making a mistake that is 110% going to happen anyway, more than once. You're going to probably play a gig, and there's probably going to be 20 mistakes in that gig if you're on a good night, because that is what it's like playing music. But when you're watching this amazing musician and you think that they're not making any mistakes, they are. They're just more experienced, so they know how to maneuver out of it. So it's maybe just
in their recovery.
Exactly. It's a reframing of a mistake. Okay, so don't fear the mistake, because it's going to happen. You got to reframe it.
Yes, and it reminds me, too, of a few performances. The performances that I remember the most that I've seen on TV or that I've seen live, typically there's something that unexpected that happens, and we could call it a mistake. Another example that I can think of is there was a week that Conan, or maybe it was Jimmy Fallon, it doesn't matter, late night U.S. talk show had the White Stripes on for a week. And I wasn't in. I didn't understand it yet. It was kind of new. I was like, I'm not sure about Meg White's drumming, right? All this. And I saw one night where Jack White was playing something, and then for the guitar solo, he ran over to the desk, and the host was gone, and used the edge of the desk as a slide on his guitar. Amazing. And it was amazing. And then the cable popped out of his guitar, and there was no sound. And I mean, the whole world watching, or whoever was watching, went, right? I mean, I did. I was like, oh God. Yeah. And then you know what he did? He tosses the guitar, and he runs back and grabs the mic and sings the most confident last chorus with Meg just bashing the drums big. And it was like, I get goosebumps right now thinking about it. Like, it was so cool and so rock and roll. And it was an instance where not only was there like a mistake made and then there was a recovery and we didn't notice. No, we noticed. And in fact, the mistake made it better. Yeah. The mistake made it memorable because it elevated the situation. The artist was at such a high level that almost welcoming the chaos, you step above it and it creates this opportunity to do something new. And there's that fearlessness that is unbelievable.
So good. So good, man. Oh.
and check this out. I gotta tell you a little bit about Neely. I saw Adam Neely last night. The New York Chill Harmonic came through Minneapolis, and the backing band did a set. They call themselves Band Practice, right? And they did a set. Shub Saran was on guitar. Josh, I can't remember his last name, and a guy named Eitan, I think, on keys, and Adam Neely. And I was so excited. And the crazy thing was to see Neely in action. I mean, I've watched a ton of his content, and I mean, I've watched his course on SBL. I mean, I'm a big fan, and I was right in the front. My wife Emily came to, and to watch. I was just like, woohoo, Adam Neely!
You had the big placard that you were holding up, like, we love you, Adam.
Yes, exactly, man. And I was blown away by how much he had all this confidence in the set around making the band do his will. So, and it wasn't forceful in a bad way. It was just like he would change something, and it was so confident. Yeah. Like he would take the band in a direction, and I thought, wow. And then as he was commanding the band, and everyone in the band actually did that at different moments, but Adam was probably the most alpha in that situation. But then as it was happening, my wife is freaking out because his equipment is teetering on the brink of disaster. He's stepping on a cable that's tensioned real tight into his camera rig. He bonks a mic stand, it falls over, he grabs it in midair, no big deal, didn't miss a beat, and his amp, I'm bonking stuff in here. His amp is also, he's playing these big, like sub-octave things, and his amp I see rattling on his cabinet to the side. And we're, and Emily and I are going, And then the thing I thought was, I wonder if I should run up there and just like fix, because his amp was going to fall off. I thought, I wonder if I should go and fix that. for him.
Yeah.
And that was my anxiety because, dude, I mean, I hate it when my amp goes, I put little pieces of gaff tape so that my amp doesn't slide around on top of my cabinet. Because I don't want that that would be a disaster. But I sort of thought, like, no, I'm not going to mess with this. If his amp I believe his amp didn't fall, okay? But it like fell off, halfway off. And I thought if it fell, it would make the show better. I believe that if his bass would have stopped working, there would have been a moment that would have been made so memorable by his reaction to that disaster. And I put disaster in quotes because it would have actually been. So I was kind of
something
then I was
really
thinking,
creative might have come out of it.
Yes. And that is a level of stage performance, especially in an improv setting, where it's cool. And the musicians that make mistakes, that mistakes elevate their game, that's a whole new level. And it's about not caring. It's about not being scared. If the amp stops working, people are going to laugh at me or they're going to think I'm not a good... No. Nobody is going to think that, right? They're going to be excited to see what happens next.
Exactly.
So, maybe think about that if you're someone that suffers from anxiety around playing, and sometimes I do. Think about, what really matters is what you do after the mistake. That's the moment to focus on, not making the mistake. Because,
100%.
like you said, it happens. We all make them.
All the time.
So you need to focus on your reaction. What comes next? Does the mistake actually hopefully you can move into a space where it enhances the performance.
Yeah, like it reminds me of there's a great clip of Mark Giuliano, who's this fantastic drummer, who's actually got some beats in the SBL Groove Trainer.
Yeah, he does.
Available on the App
plug.
Store. So it was Mark Giuliano playing in LA, and he's like doing this drum solo, and essentially his like drum kit just falls to bits.
I've seen that.
It's so good, and it's so good, and the audience go wild, and they go wild because he's just so cool. He's just like doesn't even sort of like start sweating, and he's just sort of like making it musical, and he leans into it. Oh, it's so good, man, dude. I'm gonna have to go. I'm just it's dinner time. By the way, if all of our podcasts end like this, don't they? It's always me like, dude, I'm gonna have to go. I'm cooking for the kids.
You can't keep those kids hungry, man.
Tell you what, when I get this assistant, we're gonna like just a sidebar, and Ian knows this. Ian and we try and record a lot of podcasts, and the amount of times I'm like, Ian, well, I thought we could do it tonight, but I've got a meeting, and then let's do it tomorrow. And then I thought we could do it then, but we've got this other meeting, and right. When I get an assistant, man, it's gonna be fixed. We're gonna fix it.
I just imagine the next time we record when you'd be like, oh no, the assistant's got dinner. The assistant in there whipping up some mac and cheese.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, dude, if I don't speak to you before Christmas, have a I'm going to see you in Slack and stuff like that. But have a great Christmas, man. And to anybody listening and watching as well, have a great Christmas. We will see you on the. Oh, wait a minute. When is this getting released? Christmas might be already here.
Maybe coming post-holidays, but absolutely. Hope everybody has a happy holiday season, or that you did so. And that's why I'm wearing the jaunty Star Wars Christmas sweater today.
Exactly.
We just appreciate everybody listening, and thanks so much. We're going to be back.
We're going to be back, baby. We're going to be back. We'll see you then, guys. Take it easy. Bye.
Cheers.